This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Heather Sells. Christian artist Sean Feucht says he is the latest victim of cancel culture, a concerning trend that has claimed several victims in the last week. On Friday, Feucht reported that his distributor, TuneCore, had blocked his new album from releasing. Later that day, he announced that TuneCore was releasing the album. It premiered on YouTube Sunday night. TuneCore told CBN News today that it mistakenly flagged the release as a copyright issue and that once alerted, it corrected the mistake within 2 hours. It apologized for the inconvenience and it has elevated Feucht's account to VIP status for extra visibility. Other cases include Amazon's decision to remove a book by Dr. Ryan Anderson that critiques the transgender movement. Amazon recently changed its content policy for books, saying it will not sell what it determines is hate speech. And also this week, a prominent Washington, D.C. area school district affirmed that it now forbids its schools from exclusively celebrating the birthday of children's author Dr. Seuss on Reach Across America Day. The Loudoun County School District says it is concerned about racial undertones in his books. Well, joining us now is artist Sean Feucht. Sean, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, so great to be with you guys again.
Well, I want to ask you, Sean, TuneCore says this was a mistake that was quickly corrected. What is your take on what happened?
Well, I think what we're seeing right now is cancel culture is coming for the church. And, the Biden administration and this political era that we're in is just emboldening these companies. And, I've done over 20 records that I've uploaded with TuneCore. I understand the digital distribution process. And, when this happened, it wasn't that there was an issue technically. I mean, the words that I got in the email that I posted online for everyone to see, full transparency, is that it was blocked. And there was no reason given for it to be blocked according to copyright or an error. They said there was an error after we released a lot of pushback from people online that jumped onto their accounts, people that voiced their frustration. And I think that's what we have to do in this era.
Just push back. Well, let me ask you, has the publicity over this cancellation perhaps actually benefited you by raising awareness of your album?
Well, I think for me, I think it's definitely going to benefit us. But, I feel like I've never heard of cancel culture coming for a digitally distributed album. I was calling out blatant hypocrisy, how that TuneCore and other digital distributors are releasing albums that are containing, calling for rape and violence and murdering and these horrible explicit lyrics. And here they're blocking a worship album to God. And I think that that's what we have to do in this cancel culture era right now is we have to stand up. We have to raise our voice. We cannot be silenced by the mob.
Well, I want to ask you about that because, of course, we've seen several major booksellers cancel conservative authors recently. There's a sense that conservatives and people of faith can no longer rely on mainstream digital platforms going forward. What are your plans for getting your content out, knowing you could be vulnerable again?
Yeah, and that's something that we really need to get innovative. We need to come up with creative solutions because it's just going to get worse. I was on the phone with lawyers from Alliance Defending Freedom and other big law firms that are really stepping up to help people like me in this season, and we were all in agreement. We have to find creative ways. We have to find new avenues. We have to create our own digital distribution outlets so that we won't succumb to this massive movement right now to cancel anybody that doesn't agree with, the mainstream status quo. Yeah,
well, really fascinating stuff. We are out of time, but Sean Feucht, thank you for your time.
Hey, thank you so much.
Blessings. Promising news today in the fight against COVID-19. A single-dose vaccine manufactured by Johnson & Johnson is being distributed across the country. A massive study reports it is 85% effective against the most severe COVID-19 illness. It also does not require extremely cold storage. Johnson & Johnson began shipping 3.9 million doses after getting FDA approval just this weekend. Also on the move, the COVID-19 relief package is heading to the Senate after passing the House. Well, CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson is here now to tell us about this new vaccine. Lori, seems kind of good news, bad news in that it's easier to get this vaccine to people, but perhaps not as effective as the other vaccines out there. Give us your take.
That's right. It's exactly a good news, bad news scenario because the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is just a one dose. And that just the importance of that cannot be overestimated, Heather, because so many people either don't want to go in for that second dose or can't because of logistics, because of where they live. And so just having one dose is a huge blessing and a huge benefit for this vaccine. And another thing, as you already mentioned, the fact that it only has to be refrigerated. It doesn't need to be frozen, and it certainly doesn't need to be frozen at negative 90 degrees Fahrenheit like the Pfizer vaccine. So this is great for people who may live out in the rural areas or inner city areas where mobile vaccination sites might need to be used. And so it's really going to be great. And not only in America, but in other countries. Think about developing countries. Pfizer said by this time next year, they're going to produce 1 billion doses to serve some of these underdeveloped countries.
Yeah, so fascinating to see the vaccine campaign moving forward. Are people going to have any choice with respect to which vaccine they receive?
Well, health experts are saying right now we have 3 different vaccines on the market and are strongly urging people to take whatever vaccine is made available to them first. Now, we may have a choice later on, but right now there aren't going to be choices, and they're strongly encouraging people not to pass on one vaccine and hold out for another one. Because remember, as we've been talking, Heather, there are these variants that are in the United States, and we need to stop the spread of COVID-19 before some of these variants take hold. We're talking about the UK variant and the South African variant, which is particularly concerning because we've seen the South African variant evades and eludes vaccines and treatments to some degree.
All right, in just about 15 seconds. But Lori, how many people have been vaccinated so far?
Well, so far, about 50 million people have gotten at least one shot. 25 million people have gotten 2 shots, are fully vaccinated. We saw the highest number of people get vaccinated this past Friday, 2.4 million. It looks like by March, we're going to be vaccinating 3 million a day.
All right, that is great. Lori Johnson, thanks for your reporting.
Thanks for having me.
Well, a church in Canada violated a court order and now is fined $83,000. Trinity Bible Chapel was told not to have gatherings of more than 10 people, but Pastor Jacob Rayom still opened the church to people recently. He says many people are lonely, afraid, and dealing with tribulations, and that he wants everyone to experience the hope of the gospel and Christian worship. He says he sensed a great presence of the Holy Spirit on that day. And right now, Trinity Bible Chapel's Pastor Jacob Rayom joins us from Ontario. Pastor, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about this situation. Were you and your congregation surprised by the amount of fines and what has happened here?
We had a lockdown in Ontario, our part of Canada, back in the spring. And as the lockdown progressed, we evaluated the situation and came back to church in June. And I noticed that the people who came back to church who had been under lockdown and were being terrorized by the media reports of COVID-19, I mean, it had affected them in some very painful ways. And so as the summer progressed, we started to hear that there would probably be a second lockdown. And our elders decided, based on scripture, that we would do our best to keep the church open, should that take place. And we did. We had 2 Sundays where the church was open, received fines for both of those Sundays, and then we received a court order after we opened those 2 Sundays not to open the church. And then we violated the court order at the end of January. And, you know, the report that you read is true. It was one of the most beautiful worship services that we have ever experienced as a church.
So powerful. Well, I want to ask you, what are you expecting at this point in time? What might happen?
I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we're going to eventually have to pay the fine for being in contempt of court, I'm personally also liable for a maximum of fines of $500,000 and 5 years in jail for opening the church those 3 Sundays. Each elder is liable for jail time and hundreds of thousands of dollars of fines, and the church could be on the hook for $20 million in fines for opening the church on those Sundays too. So that matter is before the court. The contempt of court issue is settled. And then last week, we submitted the papers necessary to launch a constitutional challenge to challenge the legality of some of these orders that we've been facing.
Really challenging situation. How has your church been responding to all this?
You know, I've never been part of a church that is this united, that is experiencing this sweet of a fellowship, and has seen this many people saved and baptized in this short amount of time. I think we had 7 people baptized at one of our services in January, the one where we were in contempt of court. And then just 2 weeks ago, we had 13 baptisms, and then we have a bunch more lined up. And people are coming to our church because they want some hope. And there's nothing else out there that is no one else out there is able to offer them the hope that we have. And we have eternal hope in Christ, the forgiveness of sins, the message of salvation. And if there ever was a time for the Church of the Lord Jesus Christ to be open, it's right now.
Really incredible situation. Pastor Jacob Rayom with Trinity Bible Chapel. Thanks for your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
And a quick note for you, we have a new free service from CBN News, a CBN News daily email called Quick Start. It gives you the stories you need each morning at 7 a.m. Eastern, emailed right to you, and you can subscribe to Quick Start at www.quickstart.news. Coming up, what is keeping peaceful anti-coup protesters on mission despite deadly violence over the weekend?
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
It's what starts in Israel, then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Tens of thousands of peaceful protesters continue calling for Myanmar's military to step down following its coup. Despite the deadly violent weekend, the White House is condemning Sunday's massacre. Security forces fired on peaceful crowds, leaving 18 people dead. George Thomas has our report.
As Myanmar's security forces intensify their crackdown and civilian casualties grow, the country's newly appointed special envoy to the United Nations has branded the military government as terrorists.
In his first interview with an American TV news organization, Dr. Sasa tells CBN News that Myanmar's military has turned against its own people.
It's very sad. They have declared the war on the people of Myanmar in a very aggressive way.
Sasa, medical doctor, humanitarian, and well-known evangelical Christian leader, appealed to his huge Facebook following to send him evidence of the military's human rights violations and abuses. His inbox is reportedly filled with thousands of messages.
It is really for us to submit all those evidence and proof to United Nations Human Rights Council and also UN Security Council to build up the maximum pressures to these brutal military regimes.
Scores of dramatic videos like this one, taken by an eyewitness in southern Myanmar, shows the military's use of deadly force. At least 18 people were killed this weekend across the country in the harshest civilian crackdown since the February 1st coup.
And we're also seeing, correspondingly, a large number of arrests. So as of today, we've documented at least 1,000 arrests of people who have been arbitrarily detained. And we're talking here about doctors, medical workers, teachers, activists, opposition politicians.
But the arrests and violence are doing little to deter tens of thousands of protesters, among them Myanmar's Christians, urging the military generals to step down.
I would really appreciate if our brothers and sisters around the world pray for my country in this time of troubles.
Dr. Sasa spoke from an undisclosed location. His appointment as Myanmar's UN Special Envoy is not recognized by the military junta.
Are you afraid for your life? Are you concerned that you might be arrested?
Definitely, they will do anything to harm us. They have issued several notifications threatening us, but I am appointed by the people of Myanmar. Therefore, I will represent the people of Myanmar till the end.
George Thomas, CBN News.
In other news, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has blamed Iran for Friday's attack on an Israeli-owned ship in the Persian Gulf. Israel retaliated with an overnight attack on Iranian targets inside Syria. Israel Defense Forces Chief of Staff warned the attack is a reminder of how dangerous Iran can be.
Iran is not only a nuclear threat, but it spreads terrorism and carries out terrorism and actions against civilian targets. This is the place to reiterate that the IDF is acting and will act in the face of the threats that endanger it from both near and far.
The Israeli-owned ship, the Helios Ray, is now in dock in the port of Dubai for repairs. The crew was not harmed. And joining us now with more is Jim Phillips, a senior research fellow for Middle Eastern Affairs at the Heritage Foundation. Jim, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting.
I want to ask you, so much has happened in the last week with respect to Iran. What is your take on why Iran attacked the Israeli ship?
Well, Israel and Iran have been involved in a shadow war really since the 1979 Iranian Revolution, when Iran gave Israel's embassy to the PLO after that revolution. And since then, Iran has sponsored a series of terrorist attacks by a wide spectrum of terrorist groups such as Hezbollah, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and most recently, Iraqi militias that Iran controls, using them not only against the U.S., but also against Saudi Arabia and Israel.
Really amazing backstory. I want to ask you, both Israel and the U.S. are, of course, ultimately concerned with Iran's nuclear ambitions. What do you think is the best way at this point to deter Iran?
Well, I think the best way is if Iran tries these proxy attacks, and it's increasingly sophisticated. Now the proxies are developing proxies, front groups that can launch false flag attacks. And I think the U.S. has to do exactly what it did last week. Last Thursday, the Biden administration ordered a reprisal strike against the same Iraqi militia that killed a contractor last week in Iraq on a U.S. A base where U.S. troops have been hosted. And by striking back at the same group that conducted the attack and also possibly killing Iranian Revolutionary Guards in that attack, the U.S. is sending a strong signal that future Iranian aggression will be answered with equally strong reprisals. And that's an important signal to send.
All right, a lot to be watching for. Jim Phillips with the Heritage Foundation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Still ahead, former President Trump's first big public appearance since leaving office. Find out what he had to say to a conservative conference about himself and the Republican Party.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Former President Donald Trump was back in the spotlight over the weekend with a speech to the Conservative Political Action Conference. CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson reports on his plans for the future of the Republican Party.
Former President Trump set the record straight on Sunday that he has no plans to start a third party. One thing that hasn't changed, he still believes he won the 2020 election and hasn't ruled out the possibility of running again in 2024.
You know, they kept saying, he's going to start a brand new party. We have the Republican Party. It's going to unite and be stronger than ever before. I am not starting a new party.
Trump criticized the first few weeks of President Biden's administration, particularly his immigration policies.
Biden has failed in his number one duty as chief executive, enforcing America's laws. This alone should be reason enough for Democrats to suffer withering losses in the midterms and to lose the White House decisively 4 years from now.
Trump also praised his America First agenda and said Republicans must make election security a priority.
We must pass comprehensive election reforms, and we must do it now. The Democrats use the China virus as an excuse to change all of the election rules without the approval of their state legislatures, making it therefore illegal.
Noticeably absent from CPAC this year was former Vice President Mike Pence.
Mike Pence, who's a very prayerful man, believes that this is a time for him to kind of stay a little more quiet, a little more out of view, not because he's done anything wrong, but because he's a little bit retooling. And he's thinking about how he reemerges on the stage. He's absolutely going to be in the fight.
Matt Schlapp, chairman of the American Conservative Union, which hosts CPAC, told CBN News Pence was invited but declined to attend.
He talks to the president. All the myths about how they kind of left not talking to each other is wrong. We're all in this together.
One thing Trump didn't address in his speech is the grand jury investigation into business dealings of the Trump Organization. Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance and his team finally gained access to Trump's tax returns thanks to the Supreme Court, and they're looking into accusations of tax and insurance fraud, or if he falsified the values of assets in buildings in order to get loans. Trump has denied any wrongdoing and calls the ongoing investigation a fishing expedition and witch hunt. Reporting from Virginia, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Coming up, Chadwick Boseman would have thanked God. Hear his wife's touching acceptance speech at the Golden Globes next.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Taylor Simone Ledward accepted a Golden Globe last night on behalf of her late husband, Chadwick Boseman, who lost his battle with cancer last year. The Black Panther star won Best Actor in a motion picture drama for his recent role in Ma Rainey's Black Bottoms.
And I don't have his words, but we have to take all the moments to celebrate those we love. So thank you.
She said he would have said something beautiful and told people to keep doing what they're supposed to be doing at this moment in history. And she believes he would have given thanks to God, which she did, along with his family, film team and crew. And that is it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Please remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel at any time or online with cbnnews.com. And also, please tell us what you think about the stories that you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or just talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We hope that you will join us next time. Have a great day.